we started dating really young. True love waits, but I was impatient. So that's her and that's me. And that was when we were schooling pa. And then flex ko lang, this was a few weeks ago. Okay, I look like I got lucky and I took a photo with a celebrity. Score muna tayo ng konting points. But what people don't know, all right, is that although we've dated for so long, she dumped me twice. She dumped me twice. Fully my fault, okay? And I was so remorseful. And I was so sad. Okay, I really prayed, I seek forgiveness from God and from her. And eventually, May did forgive me, and took me back. Please take me back, please. I promise not to tell too many Tito jokes anymore, And then she got me back, but I could not forgive myself. I could never move on. I could never freely be with her because it was weighing in my head. I know God forgave me. I know she forgave me. But I bear it like a scar that I could not keep my eyes off of. Because the consequences were huge and the hurt that I caused was real. Fortunately, glory to God, that God's forgiveness leads to godly righteousness. When I talk about righteousness, I'm talking about being right with God. That when God forgives us and we accept that forgiveness, He makes us right with Him. One other Tito thing when I was growing up, one other Tito thing that I tend to hear when I go for gatherings is, because my name's Rovin, emphasis on the V. However, not everybody knew that, so they call me Robin. That's fine. So when I see, can you think, if you put yourself in the Tito shoes, right? If you see this boy, right? Parang super skinny and super, in Singaporean terms, very blurred and go in, like taking food during the Christmas party, and then you want to make small talk. Robin, what would be the thing that you'll say? Robin, nasan si Batman? Right? All those people who are like chuckling, you're like, yeah, I think that's what I'll say. Yeah, I said that before. To be honest, I don't know how to answer this. I always assumed that my kuya was Batman. And then, parang ang layo, Randy and Batman. So I never knew how to answer this, but I did grow an affinity towards sidekicks. You have in a hero, you have a protagonist, but then you always have parang a sidekick. These are some in the past movies or TV and also in games, like very popular sidekicks, and I kind of like them, and I want them to succeed all the time, like Mr. Spock, right? Or Chewbacca to Han Solo, Luigi to Mario. Sometimes when you play Mario, I want to be second player because I want to be green because I want Luigi to succeed. And today we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking about what I consider a sidekick or parang a companion. Peter the Rock. Like God told him, I'm going to change your name. Your name is going to be the Rock. So we're going to be talking about the character of Peter. And as an English teacher, I have this thing. The Bible usually uses a narrative. Okay? And a narrative is parang story lang po siya. So in a story, there always are ebbs and flows, like heights and down. So we use a structure called a story plot mountain. Because it will go from here and then go up, reach a turning point, and it goes down, and everything's okay again. So that's a story plot mountain. We start off with an introduction where we learn who the characters are, we learn the setting, and then we set the story off. So that's the introduction. Usually you have that. In Marvel movies, in every other movie, there always is going to be an introduction. And then after introduction, we have the rising action where we are faced with the challenges, the complications. Basically, we're building up the plot. Parang we're putting meat into the bones, right? We're giving details. We're making the story come alive. And then we have the climax, the climatic part, the turning point. Parang, urong ka ba? Or are you going to go for it? Are you going to retreat? Are you going to change for the better or the worse? Are you going to, there's no point, there's no way at the turning point you are going to change, you are going to stay the same. Because at the turning point, it requires you to act or change, and or change. And then you have the falling action, right? So after the climatic event where all emotions, and then you have the falling action where you resolve the challenges, right? And it's the aftermath of the climax. Now what? And then, of course, we have the conclusion. So with that framework, we're going to explore Peter the Rock. So the introduction, he's a very passionate guy. He's a man of action, very physical, unafraid. Why? Because he's a fisherman. And where he fished, the storms are horrible. I cannot imagine a timid person being a fisherman during those days. First of all, it's hard work. Second of all, you fish in the night. Like, have you ever tried swimming at night? Don't. It's scary. Imagine fishing at night. It's even scarier, right? And then the storms are crazy. You have to be strong. And this is our intro. Now, his first interactions with God is beautiful. So I'm just going to go through some verses with you about how our Peter got into being the sidekick or a follower of Jesus Christ. So this is in Luke 5, 1 to 11. It's a lot of verses, so I'm just going to read through with you. And if you have your Bible, if you have your electronic, your phones have the U version or some other version, please go ahead and get it ready because I don't have slides for all the verses that I will be talking about later. But this is one of them that I do. So Luke 5, one day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowding around him, listening to the words of God. He saw the water's edge, two boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, from the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from shore. Then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. So very normal. He went on the boat. He used it as a stage so that he could project his voice a little bit. I don't know how the acoustics work, but he made it work. Okay. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets." Now, I love how, there's this web series or the Chosen did it, okay? It wasn't just, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets." Now imagine you've been fishing for one whole night, you're a fisherman, and then a carpenter comes up and says, "Uy, how about you throw it the other side?" Can you imagine the thoughts in a fisherman's head? Like, sino ba to? Who are you? But fine. If you say so, sure, let's do it. Just so that I can prove to you that I'm right, you're wrong. Okay. Then they do it, and then they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boats to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. I don't know how this feels, but a boat is supposed to float. And a fisherman is prepared to have fish in the boat, and the boat floats. That means this is an insane amount of fish on a boat. When Simon saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of the fish they had taken, and so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." So they pulled their boats up on shore and left everything and followed him. What an introduction to Peter. He was a witness of a miracle, and he answered the call. Like, he's so inspirational. Once he saw the sign, I won't sing. He saw the sign, and then he turned to Jesus. "I'll follow you wherever you go." And then Jesus says, "You're going to be with me, and I'm going to teach you how to fish for men, no longer fish." And so we have our introduction. Our character is Peter, was a typical fisherman, and our setting is the Sea of Galilee. And he was called to be fisher of men. And for the next 3 years, Peter lived as a disciple of the Lord Jesus, and Peter became the de facto spokesman of the 12. He kept, he was the one telling Jesus, he was the one telling people, he was the one leading them, 12 of them, and he was the one who's communicating all the time. And wonderfully, he was the first to confess Jesus as the Christ, the Son of the living God. He was the first one. Jesus asked him, so what do people say? Later on, I have slides for that. It's in Matthew 16. I won't spoil it for you, but he was the first one to say it. And Peter was part of the inner circle of Jesus' discipleship, along with James and John. So imagine he's always there. He saw the transfiguration. Go read your Bible. Go look for the Gospels. It is awesome. But don't take my word for it. There was also the time when Jesus rose a kid from death, and it's amazing. Okay? But don't take my word for it. Go read it up yourself. But the one I do want to read with you is found in Matthew 16. Now, the 16, 13 onwards. So when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do you people say that the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, some others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But what about you?" Jesus was concerned about his disciples. "What about you? Who do you say I am?" And then Simon Peter answered, amazing. After walking with Jesus for 3 years, this is his conclusion. "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." This very first time, on earth, Jesus on earth, somebody tell him, "You're the Messiah, the Son of the living God," after being with him for those years. And then Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah." This is his full name. "For this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter. On this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." Right? I want you to take note of that. He was the first one to tell. And look at that. Jesus replied, "Simon, son of Jonah." Like, legit. I'm no longer Rovin. I'm no longer Tito Rovin. Can you imagine Jesus Christ telling me, "Roy, Calvin, Arales, Alingalan. For this was not blessed are you." No mistake, you. Simon Peter was also the one who said, "I will die for you." These 5 words, he didn't say the 5 words part, but he said, "I will lay down my life for you." In John 13 as well, Simon Peter asked him, "Lord, where are you going?" Because Jesus said, "I'm going somewhere you can't be with me. Where I'm going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later." Peter asked, "Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." That's how passionate he was about Jesus Christ. And not only that, in Matthew 26:33, Peter is a little bit competitive. Okay? He looked around his friends. "You know what, God? Even if they fall away, I will never fall away." In Singlish, a very steady one. Okay? A very steady, I sure there one. I got your back. Right? So, this is our Peter. He followed for 3 years. He witnessed miraculous wonders and wise teachings. Feeding, he witnessed it. He walked on water, brothers and sisters. He walked on water. He saw healing. He saw dead men come alive. Right? It's crazy. Go read the gospel. It's awesome. 3 years of following Jesus, you can't help but be amazed. And then he was the one who confessed that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah. And then he professed, "I will die for you. I will lay my life for you." And then he says, "Even if others fall, I will not fall." And then the climax. Jesus gets arrested. My Messiah, the Almighty, the one that I've professed, the one that I've witnessed, he gets arrested. My hopes, I'm trying to put myself in Peter's shoes, my hopes, my dreams, the person that I've been following, that I've professed, was no match for some soldiers who wanted to take him. Can you please turn your Bibles with me to John 13? Setting is Jesus got arrested, right? And then the apostles scatter. But as Jesus was being questioned, some of the apostles tried to go nearer. And then Simon, this is from verse 15. Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. Because this disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard. But Peter had to wait outside the door. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the servant girl on duty there, and brought Peter in. "You aren't one of this man's disciples too, are you?" she asked Peter. He replied, "I am not." "Weren't you with Jesus, that guy?" And Peter said, "No, I am not." Verse 18, it was cold, and the servants and officials stood around a fire that they had made to keep warm. Peter also was standing with them, warming himself. Then I'll jump to verse 25. So Jesus was being questioned by the high priest. And then verse 25, meanwhile, Simon Peter was still standing there warming himself. So they asked him, "You aren't one of his disciples too, are you?" And then he denied it and said, "I am not." One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose Peter had cut off, challenged him. "Didn't I see you with him in the garden?" Again, Peter denied it. And at that moment, a rooster began to crow. Our Peter went through what we would call a fall arc. ARC. Usually we watch movies and the hero becomes better, or a zero becomes a hero. Our sidekick for the day got called miraculously, said all these things, witnessed all these things. And when his faith got shaken, he denied Jesus Christ. And Jesus knew this. How about us? When I was reading this, I kept thinking about myself, about how many times I've stood up here or sat there or prayed at home in secret and told God, "Lord, you're all I need. Lord, I love you." I went through camps, youth camp, Bible camps, whatever camp, and then super on fire. And by a few weeks later, I was back to normal. I witnessed miracles. I professed truths. And at the first sign of challenge, the first sign of trials, maybe I didn't deny God with my words, but I denied God with my actions. I denied God with my thoughts. I denied God even with my internet browsing history. It's like as if I didn't know God. But here's the beautiful thing about God. His forgiveness, if we take it, will lead us to godly righteousness. He will restore us. He forgive us and He will restore us. But now we go to one of my most favorite chapters in the whole Bible. I call it the best post-credit scene ever. Okay? It's a love letter to the lost, and I titled it myself last night because bros got to stick together. Okay, John 21. Now I want you to look at John 20 verse 30. John wrote this whole book, right? From chapter 1 all the way to chapter 20, and then he spoke about God. The word became flesh, and it's so awesome the way he played around with poetry and also with figurative language. And then he told the story of Jesus. And then chapter 20, he said this at the last verse. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Now, in secondary school, when you write a paper, or in higher education, when you write a paper, your conclusion will always be, you want to reiterate your point. This is why I've written it. This is why, and this is the end. Full stop. Bye. Go. You're done. Not for John. This is the last verse. Honestly, guys, read it for yourself. John 20 seemed like a conclusion, but John 21 is the best post-credit scene ever. When everything seems to have finished, and then somebody comes up, and this is it. So we'll read it together, okay? So we know the backstory now. Our Peter denied Jesus Christ 3 times. But thankfully, God, because of his almighty self, right? Jesus rose from the dead. He defeated death. He showed himself up to his disciples twice already. And then John 21 comes along. So after Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee, it happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. Okay? Why were they mentioned, the 3 of them? I'm not going to try to put meaning to it, but Simon Peter was the denier. Thomas is the proof. Hey, where's your proof? And Nathanael is the one who scoffed at, how? Nazareth? Could anything good come from there? So they're like the top 3. Maybe you identify with one of them. Maybe, the Gospels are written for us too. It's a double-edged sword. Sometimes we put ourselves there. But anyway, this is what happened. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them. And they said, some commenters were saying that fish here is the tense that was used seemed like a continuous thing. It wasn't like, let's go fishing. It's not. It's, I'm going to be a fisherman. And then a bunch of people said, you know what, us too. So they went out and got into a boat, but that night they caught nothing. This is another proof that this wasn't a leisure fish. Who goes out fishing at night? Fishermen. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. Very weird. Very weird. They followed this guy for three years, right? And followed, sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively, but followed nonetheless. So once you kind of know this person, you kind of know the silhouette. If I see Maybelline or Rebecca and Ruth, sometimes as parents, right? Even cries, even the sound, you kind of know. Like when Maybelline and I are walking around and then we hear baby crying, we stop. Like we were talking, then we stop. Is that Rudy? No. And then we continue. You kind of know instinctively, but in this case, they did not realize that it was Jesus. Maybe because they weren't expecting. You know, somehow when you walk past somebody, and then, di ka man mag-hi. It's just that I was not looking out for you. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? May nahuli na ba kayo? Have you caught anything yet? I'm hungry. Then they answered, no. And then he said, the man on the shore said, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. You guys see it, right? Deja vu. When they did this, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciples whom Jesus loved and said to Peter, who's the author, right? Like to say the disciple whom Jesus loved. So basically John told Peter, "Uy, it's the Lord, ano ba?" And when did this happen? Luke 5, when our sidekick turned protagonist was called. Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. They caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. As soon as Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken off and jumped into the water. My cyclist friends will say, "This is not arrow." Okay? He was already in his, he doesn't have his clothes, and then he started to put on his clothes and then swim. Maybe out of respect, I don't know. But it felt a very Peter-like kind of reaction. Oi, Jesus yun. What should I do? And then he started putting on, and then he swam. Okay, anyway. And then this is what I call John's Asar. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from the shore, about 100 yards. Basically, John was saying, naman ito. We're so near. Why can't we just roll? But it shows the desperation also of of Peter. That although it's a very short length, right? He couldn't wait. He don't want to wait for the others. He just wanted to go. And then John being John, by the way, John liked to put in this kind of stuff. Like, Peter and I ran towards the tomb, and then I arrived first. Ha ha ha. Read it. Anyway, I digress. For they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Why? Why is it so, specific? Why must there be charcoals? Why can't it just be fire was there and fish was being cooked? Why? You know why? Because back during John 18, and the officers and the servants and officers stood there who had made a fire of coals, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them and warmed himself. Remember, John 18 was when Peter denied it. What was the setting? Around a fire made of coals. Jesus is doing crazy things. When I was reading this, I had literal goosebumps. You know the song that we used to sing? You have turned my morning into dancing. You know that one? This one, you have turned a fire of burning coals, which is a signal of my denial, into something else. Okay, let me go back to that one. I don't know whether I'm the only one who finds it funny. Jesus walking on the shore. Have you caught any fish? No. He already had fish. Even before they came on shore, he already had fish. It's crazy. Because God doesn't really need us, but He wants us to be part of it. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. He said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught. Bring what you caught and add it to what I already have. Let's eat." And then somehow somebody counted 153 fish. Okay, this is a detail. If I was marking it as an English teacher, I would circle it and put a question mark. Why? I honestly don't know. But it's a detail to show that it actually kind of happened. Small details like this show and hints of the historical elements of the gospel. And Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Eating, guys, is important. In Revelation 3:20, "Here I am, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me. I will commune with you." Back in that era, and even now, when you invite somebody to have lunch or to come to your house, you are having fellowship. You are communing. You are chilling over food. Right? None of his disciples dared to ask, "Who are you?" Because they knew it was the Lord. And then Jesus came, took the bread and gave it to them and did the same with the fish. When did he do this? Feeding on the 5,000. Break. Distribute fish, distribute bread. He does it so often. That's like Jesus' signature move. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. Another fun fact, one of the first things Jesus did when he showed himself to his disciples was what? Eat. I'm a bit hungry. Do you guys have any food? It's his parang trademark, right? This is the part. This is the part. The best post-credit scene. When they had finished eating, Jesus was so thoughtful. These guys have been fishing for overnight. They must be hungry. They must be tired. So Jesus waited until they finished eating. And Jesus said to Simon, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than this? Simon, son of John, do you agape me more than this? That was the word that was used. Agape is unconditional love, the highest form of love, the godly love, the sacrificial love. And our brash sidekick fisherman, who was once, if you can remember what he was saying, I will lay down my life for you. I will do this for you. I will never turn away. Even if others turn away, you know what he said? I phileo you, Lord. Because you went through that already. Phileo is brotherly love. You know I admire you. You know I care about you. And Jesus said, feed my lambs, as a response. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you agape me? And he answered, yes, Lord, you know that I phileo you. You know that I love you as a brother. And Jesus said, take care of my sheep. And the third time, Jesus said to him, Simon, son of John, do you phileo me? And now I get it, why he was hurt. Because for the past 2 times, Peter has been saying, I phileo you. I phileo you. And then on the third time, Jesus said, do you phileo me? Maybe I added that intonation, but the message was clear. And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you phileo me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I phileo you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. Now you might think if we stop here, it's going to be parang, oh wow, Peter became from agape to phileo, but no. God was actually telling Peter how he can show not tell his intention or his affection towards God. Show me that you love me by feeding my sheep. Take care of my sheep. Take care of others Jesus is the good shepherd. Feed my sheep. And here's the thing, the next verse, it just struck me also when Jesus said this to Peter. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted, but when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the death, the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. It struck me that although at that moment Peter phileo Jesus already he foreknew that Peter will eventually agape Jesus. Because he laid down his life for the faith, for the gospel. He finally went, Jesus told him, feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. And at the end, you're going to die for me. You're going to love me enough to die for me. You're going to go past phileo for me. Feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. Trust me. Your phileo will change to agape. Remember this? He was brash and impulsive back then. But Jesus told him, it will come true. You will lay down your life for me. And then he said to Peter, follow me. The same thing he told Peter the first time they met. In other Gospels, it was said, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Our boy Peter went full circle. Our life is not just one story plot mountain. Peter's life is not just one story plot mountain. It's not just boop, 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 ends. It actually continues. Now let's talk about the narrative, the setting. Jesus turned the setting of Peter's biggest failure to the setting of his biggest personal redemption. Fire coals, it became a story of redemption. The power of 3 times he denied, it became 3 times he professed love. The setting The setting, God changed it. For some of us, when we cannot forgive ourselves, we get reminded of a setting. The time that we lied, the time that we hurt somebody, every time we pick up something, we get reminded of our denial, we get reminded of our failures. God can turn that to redemption. He's going to come looking for us. Proclamation. Jesus turned Peter's threefold denial into threefold commitment. I don't know him, I don't know him, I don't know him. 2, I love you, I love you, I love you. Amazing. Amazing. Our person. Jesus restored our fisher of fish into a fisher of men. Our person changed. Because God's forgiveness leads to godly righteousness. Why do I say this? Do you notice that Peter and the guys were the ones on the boat? They weren't looking for Jesus. Jesus was the one on the shore calling out to them. He might be calling to us too. We might be going through something that we want to keep secret. We might be doing something that we may not be very proud of. We need to accept Jesus' forgiveness. We need to make this right. I know relatable is how we relate to everyone, to ourselves included. But we need to stop lying, especially to the one who knows. Can you identify with Peter? Have you ever proclaimed something to God and says, I am going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and then just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 trials. I don't know you, I don't know you, I don't know you. Not with our words, with our thoughts and our actions. Or maybe God is already at the shore, but we can't recognize Him. Maybe God is already asking us, have you caught any fish? Have you found what you're looking for? But we refuse to say, no, I have not. Maybe God is inviting us to have a meal with Him, but we have refused. Come, eat with me. I'm cooking already. Bring what you have. Whatever you have, come with me. Or maybe we have a sin that we're sure that God can't overlook. It's too big a sin. It's so hypocritical. It is so damaging. Each one of us have it. But here's the thing. God forgives us, and He wants us to love Him, feed His sheep, and follow Him. So how do we relate to other people? Let's love God. Let's feed His sheep, the people that we hang out with, our brothers and sisters, the disciples that God has given us, and then follow Him. Follow Him how? I'm not going to mince. I'm not going to be fantastical. Let's just follow what Jesus did. He seeked out the laws. Hey, have you found anything yet? Come, eat with me. And then we restore them. Follow Him. I don't know how to follow Him. It's right there. Chapter 21. Follow Him. And then you will see that God's forgiveness leads to godly righteousness. When He forgives, He restores. He's not just words, it's He will show it. He will restore. He will turn your mourning into dancing, your guilt into rejoicing, your failures into redemption. God can do that. Question is whether we allow Him to. I'm not done with Peter yet. The next book, Jesus said, follow me. The next book is the book of Acts. Do you know who speaks? Peter, powered by the Holy Spirit. Who speaks to the crowd? Peter. Who leads the disciples? Peter. What's he doing? Loving God. Feeding the sheep, God's sheep. And following God. Because when we get forgiven, He restores us. There's parts to this. But God will see us through. Love Him, feed His sheep, follow Him. If there's people who have hurt you, reach out, forgive. First step, forgive. It may come later, but we need to look to restore. When there's an opportunity, let's restore somebody. Because God's forgiveness leads us to be right with Him. But we need to accept that. We need to let that go, that sin that we're sure is hindering us. I haven't gone to church for so long. I've done this with my hands. I've done this with my eyes. No way God can tolerate that. No way. I'm so broken. But the thing is, God is an expert with broken people. You're looking at one right now. So let's just accept God's forgiveness and allow Him to lead us to godly righteousness.